Well, welcome back to another installment of the Cecil Whig's Top 10 Local Sports Stories of the Decade. I am here with Bob Slagle, UCBAC Commissioner, and Gary Brown, Athletic Director of Northeast. We're going to talk about the formation of the UCBAC and how it affected Cecil County athletics. I'll start with you, Bob. If you could talk a little bit about the background and the history of the UCBAC, how it came to be, and who were the major players in getting it off the ground.
Well, it was about somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, a group of athletic directors. At the time, I was the athletic director at Edgewood. And we did compete in a lot of sports with Cecil County. And we were beginning to find some things that were bothering us. There were a big difference between the 4A schools and the 1A schools. We also were having trouble with scheduling games. So we started talking about a conference which would include at the time the 14 schools. And so the idea began, and we had people like Mel Bacon from Northeast, we had people like Dean Cox from Rising Sun, myself, and other people from different areas that were their principals, and we had ADs and we had coaches. And we came up with the basic shell of what the UCBAC was. But what happened was, at that point, there was some opposition to it by some people who just felt that it was breaking with tradition of the local county leagues that we had at that point. But basically, the outline was what we had. So it was dropped at that point, and then it was picked up another 5 or 6 years later when things began to change in the state as far as financial obligations were concerned. It was more difficult to travel, even more difficult to schedule. And it was revisited, and at this point, everyone saw the wisdom of doing it, and we began it some 6 years ago, and it's been very, very successful since then.
What were the main goals of the conference upon its formation?
The main goal of the conference was to provide each and every program, and when I say program, I mean each sport in each school, the opportunity to compete at a competitive level with schools and other programs equal to that. So let's say you have a Rising Sun Wrestling, a Falston field hockey, or whatever you have at that point. They would be able to compete against the top level teams in the state. If you have a struggling program, either because of lack of numbers, the lack of a qualified coach at some point, they would have the opportunity to compete against other teams who were just developing, just getting started. And what it was designed to do was allow each of those teams to move up what I call the spectrum of success. Learn how to compete, learn how to win against better teams, learn how to win championships, learn how to beat really good teams, then eventually get to the point where you're one of the quality teams in the state. That was the purpose, was to make life also easier for scheduling and things like that. But it was to provide, number one thing was to provide athletes with an opportunity to feel that they had something to achieve. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've been able to do, and something that I'm probably the most proud of.
Well, for both of you, I'll start with Gary. From your perspective as an athletic director, how do you think the formation of the UCBAC has influenced Cecil County?
Well, I think it's a tough call. As an athletic director, it's helped very much. You take basketball, baseball, softball, sports where there's 18 to 20 games that you're supposed to schedule. And, 6, 8, 10 years ago, we were scheduling double round robin in the county, which meant that you'd only have 8 games in the county. And then you were forced to go outside the area to find 10 games if it was tennis, baseball, softball. Forced to go outside the county and find 12 games if it was boys or girls basketball. And it was becoming more difficult each year to fill out a 20-game schedule or an 18-game schedule. So from an athletic director's point of view, the conference is a godsend. It keeps people close. It keeps you local. It helps to create new rivalries. I know we have sports rivalries now with schools in Harford County that we never dreamt of having in the past, and I think that is only going to make things continue to progress and get better over the years. So from that point of view, I think it's very beneficial. I also think it's very helpful to the athletes because playing the kids that you've played all your life, from 6, 8, 10 years old all the way through in Little League and things of that nature, you need to see what else is out there. And by having them have the opportunity to compete with the sports teams, and especially some of the higher level sports teams, 2A, 3A, 4A levels in Harford County, you only get better if you face better competition. So I think from that aspect, it's been very, very beneficial for the Cecil County teams as well.
It's allowed every athlete to compete at the highest level. And as Gary said just a little while ago, that's what you want as a team anyway. You want your kids to have to struggle to learn how to win against the better team, because they're out there. At some point in their athletic career, they're going to run into these kids. Might as well be here. And as an aside, what it's done is it's created some of the most competitive situations we've had. Now, the biggest thing for Cecil County is, because we entered this thing, Cecil County added some more sports. I think they were going to add them, but I think it's sped the process up. We're talking about lacrosse, we're talking about boys and girls, and cross country. And cross country has really become a very, very strong sport here in Cecil County. And before the UCBAC, it didn't even exist. Now, would they have put it in? Probably. But I think we sped the process up a little bit, and I think that's good for the athletes here.
How much of the UCBAC was a test in patience with some of these sports where Harford County was farther along and waiting to see if Cecil County could catch up?
I think it's a test. I still think it's a test in patience. Quite frankly, there's unique challenges year in and year out. There are sports that Harford County is superior to us in, but there's also sports that Cecil County is very strong in too. And it's a two-way street. I mean, we go around and around on football. Football is a difficult sport to create a schedule for, with the classification system, with the home and home series where you're trying to get 2-year contracts. It's one sport where you can only play one game a week, so creating a 10-game schedule and being in a position where the one division has 8 teams, the other division has 7 teams, and you have to worry about the division that has the odd number of teams filling out your schedule. And if you've got a bye, week number 10, that's usually the big conference night for just about every conference in the state. PA, Delaware, all around. So there's unique challenges that we face with this conference year in and year out. Sports season in and sports season out, but I don't think that takes away from the many accomplishments that we have, and we can't lose sight of that. And there's a lot of sports in Cecil County that I guess the bar has been raised for because of the regular competition with Harford County. But I also think volleyball is a perfect example with Harford County. In Cecil County, we were always very strong in volleyball, and now there are several teams that are really stepping up in Harford County. So I think it's been a mutual situation. I don't think it's just exclusive what has Harford County done for Cecil County. I think it's a two-way street.
I agree, and I think when we originally formed the league, we knew, for example, that in boys basketball, again a sport that I coach, that the predominant teams in the conference would come from Harford County. Although, to be honest, some of our toughest competition when I was coaching came from Elkin, and when they had Piner and all those guys that were there. It was a difficult thing to do. But we also knew that Harford County would benefit from softball, baseball, volleyball, field hockey, sports where Cecil County had been very, very strong. And what that's done has allowed that to happen. And I go back to wrestling because I think it's so important. At one point, you had strong, maybe 1 or 2 strong teams in Harford, 1, maybe 2 strong teams in Cecil. Now all of a sudden they have to compete against each other, and they all get better. They all get better. And wrestling's a tough sport to get people to come to. So they get better. The other teams get to compete. We have almost all full squads all of a sudden this year because they have an opportunity